The tension in the diplomatic reception hall was palpable as Secretary of State Marco Rubio rushed through the crowded East Room of the White House, his expression betraying the urgency of the situation unfolding before dozens of international dignitaries and press members. President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky stood merely feet apart, their faces flushed with frustration after what witnesses described as a heated exchange over international aid commitments. The elaborate chandeliers cast dramatic shadows across the room as stunned diplomats and officials whispered among themselves, wondering what would happen next in this unexpected diplomatic incident. The seeds of conflict had been planted weeks earlier during preliminary negotiations regarding military cooperation between the two nations. White House staff scrambled behind the scenes, unsure how to proceed as the carefully orchestrated event threatened to unravel. Senior advisors exchanged worried glances across the room, their expressions betraying the seriousness of the situation unfolding before dozens of international dignitaries. President Trump had publicly announced his intention to re-evaluate all foreign aid packages, creating anxiety among several international allies. Ukrainian President Zelensky had traveled to Washington with high hopes of securing continued American support for his country's development initiatives, only to be met with unexpected resistance during their private meeting earlier that morning. Both leaders were known for their strong personalities and unwavering stances, making this public display of disagreement particularly concerning for the future of American-Ukrainian relations. The elegant diplomatic reception, originally planned as a celebration of international cooperation, had transformed into a stage for political drama. The ornate presidential seal on the podium stood as a silent witness to this unexpected diplomatic standoff that threatened to overshadow all other planned announcements and agreements. Secretary Rubio had been monitoring the situation from a separate meeting with congressional leaders, receiving urgent text messages from his staff about the deteriorating diplomatic situation. He immediately recognized the potential international consequences if this disagreement escalated further in front of the assembled international press. With reporters already reaching for their phones and cameras focusing on the two presidents, Rubio knew he had only moments to prevent what could become a significant diplomatic crisis that would dominate headlines worldwide and potentially damage years of careful international relationship building. Secretary Rubio moved purposefully through the crowd, his years of political experience evident in his composed demeanor despite the crisis unfolding before him. He had navigated countless challenging situations throughout his career, from heated Senate debates to delicate international negotiations, but this particular conflict carried especially high stakes given the current geopolitical climate. As he reached the center of the controversy, Rubio made a decision that would later be analyzed by political commentators worldwide. Instead of pulling President Trump aside privately, as protocol might suggest, he positioned himself directly between the two leaders and placed a hand on each of their shoulders in a bold display of diplomatic intervention. The room fell completely silent as smartphones captured this unexpected moment, with even seasoned political journalists holding their breath to see how the American president would respond to this unprecedented interruption by his own Secretary of State. No one could have predicted what would happen next in this high-stakes political drama. The surprising gesture from Secretary Rubio caught both presidents off guard, momentarily interrupting their heated exchange. With remarkable diplomatic skill, he suggested they continue their discussion in the adjacent Blue Room, away from the prying eyes and ears of the international press corps. His voice carried just enough authority to command respect while maintaining the careful deference required when addressing heads of state. The assembled crowd watched in amazement as both powerful leaders, known for their strong wills and resistance to being managed, actually followed Rubio's suggestion and moved toward the indicated doorway. White House staff scrambled to secure the private meeting space, while diplomatic teams from both countries exchanged confused glances. Once inside the historic Blue Room, with its distinctive oval shape and elegant French Empire decor, Rubio demonstrated why many considered him one of the most skilled diplomats in Washington. He addressed both leaders with remarkable candor, acknowledging the legitimate concerns on both sides while emphasizing the greater importance of maintaining strong public relations between their nations. The ornate antique furniture and presidential portraits surrounding them served as reminders of the historical significance of maintaining international alliances, even through difficult negotiations. Rubio proposed a compromise solution that would allow both presidents to claim political victories while preserving the essential cooperation between their countries. The secretary's approach represented masterful political maneuvering, finding middle ground where moments before there seemed to be none. He suggested a phased approach to the aid package that would include stronger accountability measures as requested by President Trump, while maintaining the overall support that President Zelensky desperately needed. As he outlined the potential framework, the expressions on both presidents' faces gradually shifted from confrontation to consideration. The delicate Sèvres porcelain clock on the mantelpiece ticked steadily through moments of thoughtful silence, as each leader weighed the proposed solution against their political needs and national interests. Meanwhile, outside in the reception hall, speculation ran wild about what dramatic confrontation might be occurring behind closed doors. The negotiations in the Blue Room extended for nearly 45 minutes, while the scheduled program remained in awkward limbo. White House communications staff attempted to maintain normalcy by extending the planned musical interlude and rearranging the speaking schedule. But guests could focus on little besides the closed door and what might be transpiring behind it. Senior advisors from both administrations paced anxiously outside, occasionally pressing their ears against the historic wood panels, attempting to discern any clues about the discussion inside. International allies present at the reception exchanged concerned glances, recognizing that the outcome of this impromptu meeting could have far-reaching implications for global politics and security arrangements throughout Eastern Europe. When the Blue Room doors finally opened, the transformation was remarkable. President Trump emerged first, followed by President Zelensky and Secretary Rubio, all three men now smiling and displaying unexpected camaraderie. The body language. Experts present immediately noted the shift from tension to cooperation, particularly in how the two presidents now stood shoulder to shoulder rather than in opposition. The assembled guests and media representatives fell silent again, cameras flashing rapidly to capture this dramatic turnaround in diplomatic relations. White House staff appeared visibly relieved as the carefully planned event seemed back on track, though everyone remained curious about what exactly had transpired during those crucial 45 minutes of private discussion. President Trump approached the podium with his characteristic confidence, but with none of the frustration that had been evident earlier. He announced a new strategic partnership initiative between the United States and Ukraine, describing it as perhaps the strongest agreement ever between the two nations. The details he outlined clearly incorporated elements that satisfied both countries' primary concerns, representing a genuinely collaborative approach rather than the one-sided arrangement that had sparked the earlier conflict. As he spoke, President Zelensky nodded approvingly beside him, occasionally exchanging appreciative glances with Secretary Rubio, who stood modestly in the background, allowing the presidents to take center stage for this important announcement. What truly shocked everyone present was President Trump's unprecedented public acknowledgement of Rubio's role in facilitating the agreement. Breaking from his prepared remarks, the president stated that Marco Rubio had just demonstrated why he was the best diplomatic mind in Washington. This remarkable praise from a president known for rarely sharing credit represented an extraordinary moment in modern political history. The spontaneous applause that erupted throughout the East Room reflected genuine appreciation for Rubio's skillful intervention in what could have become a serious diplomatic incident. Political analysts present immediately began typing furiously on their devices, recognizing the significance of this rare presidential endorsement. The reception continued with renewed energy and optimism following this unexpected diplomatic breakthrough. Guests who had witnessed the entire dramatic arc from conflict to resolution circulated through the room, sharing their perspectives on what they had observed. International representatives expressed relief that potential tensions had been resolved. So effectively, while political insiders speculated about the enhanced status Secretary Rubio now enjoyed within the administration, the ornate antique furniture and presidential portraits surrounding them served as reminders of the historical significance of maintaining international alliances even through. The elaborate dessert service commenced as scheduled, though few people focused on the culinary offerings, instead gravitating toward any staff members who might provide additional details about the remarkable negotiation that had just occurred. Secretary Rubio maintained his characteristic humility throughout the remainder of the event, deflecting praise and emphasizing the leadership of both presidents in reaching the new agreement. When pressed by journalists for details about his intervention, he consistently redirected attention to the substantive policy achievements rather than the dramatic personal dynamics that had captivated everyone's attention. Behind his modest exterior, however, close observers noted a quiet satisfaction in his expression as he watched the two presidents continuing to interact positively throughout the evening. The diplomatic corps present recognized the exceptional skill required to navigate such sensitive personalities and high-stakes political considerations. The evening concluded with a previously scheduled cultural performance that now seemed to celebrate not just general diplomatic relations, but the specific crisis that had been averted through Rubio's timely intervention. As the Ukrainian folk ensemble performed traditional music, the secretary found himself repeatedly approached by foreign dignitaries seeking private conversations, clearly recognizing his elevated influence within the administration. What had begun as a potential diplomatic disaster had transformed into a showcase for American diplomatic prowess and Rubio's personal political acumen. The elegant White House surroundings, which had earlier witnessed such tension, now framed a scene of international cooperation and effective crisis management. In the weeks that followed, the impact of Secretary Rubio's diplomatic intervention extended far beyond that singular evening. The framework agreement developed during those crucial 45 minutes in the Blue Room evolved into a comprehensive bilateral partnership that addressed long-standing issues between the United States and Ukraine. President Trump, impressed by Rubio's effectiveness, increasingly relied on his Secretary of State for other challenging international negotiations, creating a working relationship that surprised political observers who had predicted tensions between these former political rivals. The Ukrainian government similarly expressed newfound respect for American diplomatic professionalism, with President Zelensky specifically mentioning Rubio's approach as a model for international conflict resolution. Media coverage of the event eventually shifted from sensationalist headlines about presidential clashes to more substantive analysis of the diplomatic breakthrough achieved. Political commentators noted that Rubio had accomplished something remarkable, satisfying the policy priorities of his strong-willed president while simultaneously advancing broader American strategic interests and international relationships. Career diplomats throughout the State Department regarded the incident as a masterclass in crisis intervention, with many reporting renewed pride in their profession following Rubio's high-profile success. Foreign policy experts cited the incident as evidence of a more sophisticated and nuanced American approach to international relations. Perhaps most significantly, Secretary Rubio's handling of this high-stakes situation permanently altered his political standing, both domestically and internationally. Citizens who previously knew him primarily as a former presidential candidate or senator now recognized him as a skilled statesman, capable of navigating complex international challenges. Speculation about his political future intensified, with many wondering whether this diplomatic triumph might position him for another presidential run in the future. Rubio himself remained focused on his current responsibilities, but those closest to him noted a new confidence in his approach to even the most challenging diplomatic assignments, knowing he had successfully navigated one of the most potentially explosive international incidents in recent memory.